I'm here today with W Ragley. JW is the Executive Director for the South Carolina chapter of the National Federation of Independent Businesses. Thank you for being here today.
Thanks, Tim. I appreciate being here.
Well, what we're talking about today is workers' comp here in South Carolina. And I was wondering if you could give me your thoughts on workers' comp here and how the current system affects our state's economy and how it affects small businesses.
Well, thanks, Tim, for the opportunity to be here today. Workers' comp has really become a very big issue for small business in the state in a very short period of time. It's amazing to think just 6 years ago, our premiums for workers' compensation in South Carolina were the third least expensive in the entire country. And we had a really good system that was working efficiently, getting workers back to work, the medical care they needed, and the costs were very low. In a span of just 6 years, though, we've gone from the third least expensive in the nation to the 25th most expensive in the nation, a leap of 24 spots in the national rankings. And a large part of it's due because the system itself has become broken over time as the South Carolina Supreme Court, the Workers' Comp Commission have begun to erode workers' comp law and what it meant to have an accident and to have an injury at work. And what that has done is it's increased the cost of the system exponentially. And small businesses bear the brunt of that cost because we have to go out into the private market and buy that insurance. And we've seen 3 straight years of double-digit increases in premiums in this state. We're one of the few states in the country that have seen something like that. And in fact, this past year, our 18.4% increase in premiums was the second largest in the entire country, only behind Arizona. So workers' compensation in this state is broken, and small business really faces a crisis when it comes to finding appropriate coverage and insurance for their workers.
All right. Last year, our legislature attempted to address some of these problems. And one of the big things that was talked about then was the second injury fund. Could you please explain kind of what the second injury fund does and whether that needs to be repaired, changed, or reformed?
The second injury fund was created, I believe, in the 70s, and the purported goal of the second injury fund was to have a positive effect on the employment of folks with previous injuries by allowing employers to get a reimbursement through an assessment on all the insurance carriers and self-insured companies in the state into a general pool. The problem with that is that there's been no study to show that it's had any impact at all on workers in this state who have had prior injuries and helping them get employment. So our members, when we asked this question this past year, 77% of our membership said we want to eliminate the second injury fund. And there's a couple of reasons for that. First and foremost, it's a fund that small business rarely accesses. 98% of the employers in the state, in fact, never receive a benefit out of the fund. But everybody who has private market insurance or if they're self-insured, they're assessed for the fund regardless if they use it or not. Second of all, we look at it as a tax on small business. Again, if you've got 2% of the employers that actually are getting a benefit out of it and the other 98% are paying for it, that's really nothing but a wealth transfer. And that's really just a tax on small businesses to subsidize mostly large employers and perhaps a few insurance companies. But also you've got trial lawyers that are going to get their 33% of their fees out of the second injury fund as well. The second injury fund really is a state-sanctioned slush fund for somebody, whether it's trial lawyers, big business, insurance companies, and we really need to take that away out of the system and take the incentive away for people to abuse that fund and frankly take money out of the pockets of small business.
Another thing last year's bill included were a number of restrictions on repetitive injuries. Do you believe that these restrictions should be put in place, and how will it affect workers' comp and the rates for small businesses?
Our membership has spoken about repetitive traumas before, such as carpal tunnel and some other injuries like that, and 89% of our membership says we need to have some definitions as to what is repetitive trauma. It was not written to the workers' comp law. It was developed through court cases and commissioner hearings, and that's really not a good way to make law. In fact, that's not making law. That's the judicial branch of our government legislating from the bench. So we think it's important that you have definitions for repetitive trauma in the bill. We believe that will make it fair to the system. It will be fair to the employers. The employees should know what injuries are compensable, and it will help the employers know what they've got to do to improve their safety programs so we can lessen the number of repetitive traumas. But right now we don't have a definition of what that is. We think it's important that we have definitions in there, and we hope to continue to fight to keep those definitions as part of the bill.